Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night. This is a very, very fast review of some political philosophers for Philosophy 12 to help you prepare for the test coming up in April. You can pause this video on any of these slides if you want to take a look. I'm going to go really fast in this quick video. For this slide, I'm just going to read over the bold points, but you can pause and take a look at the other points. Leaders should be strong like lions and clever like foxes. For Machiavelli, it is better for leaders to be feared than loved. He believed a leader should lie and betray to maintain power. Feel free to pause and take a look at the other notes. Thomas Hobbes wrote The Leviathan. He believed human nature was prone to being bad. He described the state of nature without government as a war of all against all. He added some details to this, that life would be like, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. You should memorize those 5 descriptive words, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, how we describe what life would be like. The purpose of government was to protect people from themselves with strong authority. For a safe and secure society, we need a strong authority. That's also a really important piece to remember. He believed in the concept of something called the social contract, but he believed it was not breakable. It was binding, and there was no right to revolt. He also believed in a concept called state of nature, but his description of that state of nature was very different from John Locke. He believed that the monarch should have absolute authority and be strong and scary like a sea monster called a Leviathan. He named his book after this Leviathan. John Locke also agreed that there was something called a theoretical state of nature that existed before government, but his idea of the state of nature was very different than Thomas Hobbes. He believed that there existed natural rights in this state of nature, and these natural rights are the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to property. He agreed with constitutionalism. He believed that there should be a constitution that limits the power of the monarch. So he was not an absolutist like Thomas Hobbes, but he believed that the king or queen should be under the law. He agreed with something called the social contract theory, that you enter into a contract with the authority, but there are some limitations where this contract can be broken, and if the king or queen is doing a bad job and they've broken the contract, then there exists a possible right to revolt or rebel or have a revolution. He believes that the purpose of government is to protect our natural rights and our freedoms. If the government fails in that purpose, the government has broken the social contract. Here's a quote by John Locke: "The end of law is not to abolish or restrain freedom, but to preserve and enlarge freedom." Montesquieu is a very important philosopher to know because he did a lot of work on the separation of power and why power should be separated into separate branches. There's a quote at the top that I'll let you read on your own, but I'm going to go skip down here to the branches are executive, legislative, and judicial. In the executive branch can be a little bit the most confusing one because in the American system it would include like the president, in the Canadian system the prime minister and the Canadian government. But it could also include offices of mayor or chief police, people who enforce the law. Legislative are lawmakers, like the Congress in the United States or the Parliament in Canada. And the judicial branch is the judges in the court system. Also, perhaps the juries in the court system. The philosophical reason why Montesquieu thought this idea of branches would work was because he believed that the human nature humans have envy and jealousy, and this would mean they would compete in the branches to gain power and to have more power than the other branches and keep the other branches in check. You should be able to know what the branches are and give examples from each of the branches. Jean-Jacques Rousseau made also a huge contribution to politics by writing a book called The Social Contract. He was a romantic, and he was critiqued by many other contemporary philosophers that were more interested in empirical and observable facts. Voltaire disagreed with Rousseau, and Rousseau and his followers disagreed with Voltaire. In particular, he had a fascinating belief that he believed that the human nature and the state of nature was naturally good, and that civilization was a corrupting force, civilization and government. And this puts him in a very different philosophical starting point than Thomas Hobbes. So he had a big concept that he talked about called the general will. Now I'll explain this as teenagers in high school. Imagine that a teenager in high school says, I do not want somebody to steal my cell phone. Well, let's assume that all teenagers feel that way, where I do not want someone to steal my cell phone. Well, that would become the general will, that it's a common morality. That therefore everyone in the school says, do not steal each other's cell phone. This becomes the general will. That is a simple way of simplifying this concept that he talked about called the general will, a morality that's interconnected with an individual will or morality or preference. Voltaire was a fascinating character because he was always saying things that got himself into trouble, where he was either arrested or expelled or fleeing because he said or did something that got him into hot water. And so there was scandal after scandal with Voltaire, sometimes over big things, sometimes over small things. Key thing, though, is he advocated for justice, human rights, and religious tolerance, and so he was a key figure talking about human rights. But unlike some of the other philosophers, he believed that enlightened monarchs are key to this progress, that a strong, even absolute monarch is going to be a key person in implementing liberal ideas. So he had a mixture of liberalism with absolutism and authority, which was a little bit unusual for our 21st century minds to wrap our heads around. He learned English and read the writings of John Locke. He spoke frankly against religious and political establishment. After lifelong scandals and exile and writing, he finally wrote his most famous work, Candide. The conclusion depicted the secret of happiness was to cultivate one's garden, a sort of a practical, physical type work. And maybe he was feeling that there were certain types of idealism and metaphysics that were getting too abstract, academic, and away from the basics and the practical solutions of life. And so he was looking at the practical solutions being important. At the same time, he conflicted with Rousseau, and he did not like the Romantic movement. All right, I hope you found this really flash, fast, 9-minute review helpful for you to study. If you found this helpful, feel free to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you, and good luck studying, and good luck with your future learning.